Hey guys. Tonight we're headed somewhere old, cold, and heavily guarded. If you enjoy this kind of thing, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's drift back to the Middle Ages. The darkness is absolute when you wake. No gentle morning light filters through windows here in the guard barracks. Only thick stone walls and narrow arrow slits that let in nothing but cold drafts and the occasional whisper of wind. Your body aches from sleeping on the thin straw mattress that's seen better days, probably better years. The wool blanket that seemed adequate when you first lay down now feels damp and insufficient against the morning chill that seeps through every crack in the stone. You lie still for a moment, listening to the soft snores and rustling movements of your fellow guards. Someone coughs wetly in the darkness, a sound that echoes slightly off the stone walls and hangs in the cold air. Another guard mutters something unintelligible in his sleep, then rolls over with a creak of straw and leather. The air smells of unwashed bodies, damp wool, and the lingering smoke from last night's dying fire in the small brazier near the door. Your breath forms small clouds in the cold air as you finally push yourself upright, your joints protesting with quiet pops and creaks that seem impossibly loud in the morning stillness. Your clothes are where you left them, folded beside your sleeping pallet in a careful arrangement that's become second nature. The linen under tunic feels stiff and slightly damp as you pull it over your head. It never quite dries completely in this climate, and the constant moisture makes the fabric rough against your skin. The dampness clings to the cloth like morning dew, and you shiver as the cold material settles against your body. The wool tunic follows, heavy and scratchy, but necessary for warmth. You've learned to move slowly in the morning, partly to avoid making noise that might wake the others, but mostly because quick movements in the cold make your muscles seize up like rusty hinges. The leather jerkin comes next, its familiar weight settling across your shoulders like an embrace from an old friend. The leather is old and worn soft in some places, cracked and stiff in others where the weather has gotten to it despite your best efforts at maintenance. You've oiled it recently with what fat you could scrape together, but it still creaks softly as you lace it up, each eyelet requiring careful threading with fingers that are clumsy with cold. You have to stop twice to blow warm breath on your hands, cupping them near your mouth and feeling the brief warmth against your palms before the cold claims them again. Standing is an effort that requires planning. Your back complains with a deep ache that speaks of too many nights on thin mattresses and too many days standing at attention. Your feet are numb against the cold stone floor, and you can feel the rough texture of the worn flagstones through the thin soles of your sleeping hose. You slide your feet into your boots, thick leather affairs that reach nearly to your knees and represent both your most valuable possession and your greatest source of daily misery. The boots are well made but never quite the right size, a bit too narrow for your feet but the best you could afford when you took this position. They were expensive enough to represent a significant portion of your first year's wages, but not expensive enough to fit properly. The leather is stiff from yesterday's dampness, soaked through during your watch and never fully dried despite your efforts by the fire. You have to work your feet into them gradually, wincing as the material presses against tender spots that never quite heal, permanent reminders of the daily battle between foot and leather. Around you, other guards are beginning their own slow morning rituals. Willem, who sleeps 2 pallets over, sits on the edge of his bed pulling on his hose with careful, methodical movements that speak of long practice and longer suffering. His breath steams in the cold air, and he pauses occasionally to cough, a dry, persistent sound that's been getting worse over the past few weeks. The cough echoes off the stone walls and settles into your consciousness like a drumbeat, regular and increasingly concerning. Near the door, old Harold is already dressed and is quietly stoking the brazier, adding small pieces of charcoal to coax more warmth from the dying embers. He moves with the economy of motion that comes from years of practice, wasting no energy on unnecessary flourishes. The coals glow briefly brighter as he breathes life into them, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls and providing a small circle of warmth that barely extends beyond arm's reach. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders, pulling the hood up against the cold that seems to emanate from the very stones of the castle. The wool is thick but worn thin in places where use and weather have taken their toll, and there's a tear near the hem that you keep meaning to mend but never quite find the time. The cloak smells of smoke and damp and the particular mustiness that comes from wool that's been wet too many times. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar, and it's warm enough when the wind isn't too fierce and the rain isn't driving sideways. The walk to the great hall for breakfast takes you through stone corridors that seem designed to drain warmth from the air and hold onto cold like a miser hoards coins. Your footsteps echo softly, joined by the similar sounds of other guards making their way to the morning meal. The sound of boots on stone creates a rhythm that follows you through the passages, not quite marching, not quite walking, but something in between that speaks of men who've learned to move together without coordination. The corridors are lit by torches set in iron brackets along the walls, but the light they provide is flickering and inadequate, creating pools of warm yellow light separated by stretches of deep shadow that could hide anything or nothing. The flames dance in the drafts that seem to circulate through the castle like living things, and occasionally a torch will sputter and threaten to go out entirely, plunging a section of corridor into near darkness before catching again. You pass through the inner courtyard, where the sky is just beginning to show the faintest hint of gray against the black of night. The air is sharp and clean here, carrying the scent of wood smoke from the kitchen fires and the earthier smells of the stables where horses stamp and snort in the darkness. Your breath forms thick clouds that dissipate quickly in the still air, and you can hear the distant sound of servants beginning their own daily routines. The clatter of pots and pans, the creak of wooden buckets, the soft voices of people who've learned to work in the dark. The cobblestones are slick with dew, and you walk carefully to avoid slipping on the smooth, worn stones that have been polished by countless feet over the years. The stones are uneven, set by masons long dead, and you know from experience exactly where the treacherous spots are. The slight depression near the well where water pools, the raised stone near the gate that catches unwary toes, the section by the stables where something other than water makes the footing uncertain. The great hall is already busy with the quiet activity of servants preparing for the day. Long wooden tables are set with simple wooden bowls and cups, arranged with the kind of precision that comes from doing the same task every morning for years. The smell of baking bread mingles with the smoke from the large hearth at the far end of the hall, creating an atmosphere that's almost welcoming despite the early hour and the general grimness of castle life. You take your place at one of the tables designated for guards, settling onto the hard wooden bench with a small sigh of relief. Sitting feels good after the walk, though the bench is uncomfortable and splinters catch occasionally on your clothing. The wood is worn smooth by use but still hard enough to make extended sitting an exercise in endurance. Around you, other guards settle into their places with the same mixture of relief and resignation. Breakfast arrives in the form of thick trenchers of brown bread and wooden bowls of weak ale. The bread is coarse and dark, made from rye and barley with what might be a small amount of wheat mixed in if you're lucky. It's fresh from the ovens, which is a blessing that shouldn't be taken lightly, but even fresh it's dense and requires serious chewing. The crust is hard enough to challenge your teeth, and the interior is heavy and moist in a way that speaks of grain that wasn't quite the best quality to begin with. You tear off pieces and dip them in the ale to soften them. A technique you've learned makes the meal more manageable and less likely to break your teeth on particularly hard portions. The ale is thin and slightly sour, with a taste that suggests it's been watered down significantly. The good ale goes to the nobility and the sergeants, while the common guards make do with this pale imitation. Still, it's better than water, which often tastes of the wooden barrels it's stored in and sometimes worse things besides. The liquid is warm, though, and wet, and it helps wash down the bread while providing some small amount of sustenance to begin the day. You can feel it settling in your stomach, not quite satisfying but filling enough to quiet the immediate demands of hunger. Around you, your fellow guards eat in relative quiet, broken occasionally by low conversations about the day ahead or complaints about aching joints and poor sleep. The sound of chewing and quiet conversation mixes with the crackling of the fire and the distant sounds of the castle coming to life. Servants calling to each other in voices muffled by stone walls, horses stamping and snorting in the stables, the clatter of pots and pans from the kitchens where the day's more substantial meals are already being prepared. Dogs bark somewhere in the distance, and you can hear the creaking of wooden wheels as carts begin their daily rounds. You eat slowly, partly because the bread requires it, but also because this is one of the more comfortable parts of your day. The hall is warmer than the corridors, heated by the large hearth and the presence of many bodies breathing and moving in the enclosed space. The bench, while hard, is at least stable, and sitting gives your feet a rest from the constant pressure of your ill-fitting boots. After breakfast, you make your way to the armory to collect your equipment for the day. The armory is a long, low room built into the base of one of the towers, its stone walls lined with wooden racks holding spears, shields, and various pieces of armor in states of repair that range from adequate to questionable. The air here smells of metal and oil, with underlying notes of leather and the sharp scent of grinding stone from weapons being maintained by guards with more time than you currently possess. Your spear hangs in its designated spot, a simple but sturdy weapon with an iron point that you've kept sharp and free of rust through careful attention and regular maintenance. The wooden shaft is smooth from years of handling, worn to a comfortable grip by countless hands including your own, and there's a slight groove worn into the wood where your hand naturally falls during long watches. You run your fingers along the shaft, checking for new cracks or splinters that might indicate weakness, then examine the iron point for any signs of corrosion that could compromise its effectiveness. Satisfied with the spear's condition, you lift it from the rack and feel its familiar weight settle into your grip. The balance is perfect for your height and arm length, and you practice a few basic thrusts and parries to make sure your muscles remember the movements. The weapon feels like an extension of your arm, and you realize again how much you depend on this simple tool for both your livelihood and your safety. Your shield is small and round, made of wood reinforced with iron strips that have been carefully riveted in place. The leather grip is worn smooth and shaped to your hand by years of use, and the wood bears several small dents and scratches from training sessions and the occasional minor altercation with overly enthusiastic drunks or belligerent merchants. You slip your arm through the leather straps and adjust them for comfort, Then practice a few basic defensive movements to make sure everything feels right and the straps haven't stretched or weakened overnight. The sergeant, a grizzled man named Thomas who's been in service longer than you've been alive, assigns you to morning watch on the eastern wall. His voice carries the authority of experience and the weariness of someone who's given the same orders countless times to countless guards over the years. It's not a bad assignment. The eastern wall faces the main approach to the castle, so there's occasionally something to see beyond empty landscape, and it's somewhat sheltered from the prevailing wind that makes western positions so miserable. You've had worse duties, like the northern tower that catches every bit of weather the sky can produce and offers nothing to look at but empty moorland stretching to the horizon, or the southern gate that faces the sun directly and becomes an oven during summer months. The eastern wall, by comparison, offers variety and relative comfort, though comfort is always a relative term when discussing guard duty. You make your way up the stone steps that lead to the wall walk, your boots echoing hollowly on the worn stone in a rhythm that speaks of purpose and routine. The steps are uneven, worn smooth by countless feet over the years, each one slightly different in height and depth so that climbing them requires attention and care. You have to watch your footing in the dim light provided by occasional torches that flicker in their brackets, casting dancing shadows that make depth perception difficult. Your spear makes a soft scraping sound against the stone wall as you climb, and you have to adjust your grip on your shield to keep it from catching on the narrow stairway. The confined space amplifies every sound, and you become acutely aware of your breathing, the creak of your leather jerkin, and the soft rustle of your cloak against the stone walls. The wall walk is a narrow stone path that runs along the top of the castle walls, protected on the outer side by crenellated battlements and open to the inner courtyard on the other. The stonework is solid but weathered, each block carefully fitted by masons whose names are lost to time but whose skill remains evident in the precise joints and solid construction. The mortar between the blocks has been repaired many times over the years, creating a patchwork pattern that tells the story of decades of maintenance and care. Patches of moss grow in the cracks where moisture collects, creating small spots of green that provide the only color in the gray stone landscape. The stone is often slick with moisture, especially in the early morning when the dew is heavy and the sun hasn't yet warmed the surfaces enough to dry them. You've learned to walk carefully on the wall walk, testing each step before committing your full weight to it. You take your position at the designated spot along the wall, settling into the routine that will define the next several hours of your life. The view from here encompasses the main road leading to the castle, a stretch of farmland with a few scattered buildings that send thin streams of smoke into the morning air, and the edge of a forest that extends to the horizon like a dark green carpet. It's not an unpleasant view, and on clear days you can see for miles, but it's one you've seen countless times before, and it rarely changes in any meaningful way. The wind picks up as the morning progresses, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The wool flutters in the breeze, and you have to hold it closed with one hand while maintaining your grip on your spear with the other. The wind carries the scent of rain, and you look up at the sky to see clouds building in the distance like gray mountains advancing across the landscape. The prospect of standing guard in the rain is not appealing, but it's part of the job, and you've done it many times before. Your feet are already beginning to ache in your boots. The leather has softened slightly from the warmth of walking, but it's still too tight in places, and you can feel the familiar pressure points beginning to make themselves known. The boots press against your toes, rub against your heels, and create points of irritation that will only get worse as the day progresses. You shift your weight from foot to foot, trying to find a position that's more comfortable, but the relief is temporary and the discomfort always returns. The morning passes slowly, each minute marked by the gradual progression of shadows across the stone battlements. You walk your assigned section of the wall, a distance of perhaps 50 paces, turning at each end to retrace your steps in an endless pattern that becomes as automatic as breathing. The stone battlements are waist-high, and you occasionally lean against them to rest, though not for too long. The sergeant makes irregular rounds, and being caught lounging would result in extra duties or worse. From your position, you can see other guards manning their posts along the walls. On the southern wall, you can make out the figure of Marcus, a young man who joined the guard only a few months ago and still carries himself with the enthusiasm of someone who believes that being a castle guard is somehow romantic or heroic. He paces his section with energy that you remember having once but can no longer quite believe you ever possessed. The reality of the job, the long hours, the discomfort, the mind-numbing repetition, has a way of wearing down such illusions like water wearing away stone. To the west, old Harold has taken his position on the tower that overlooks the river approach. Harold has been a guard longer than anyone else currently serving, and he's developed a way of performing his duties that looks alert and proper from a distance but actually requires minimal effort. He leans against the battlements with practiced casualness, scanning the horizon with eyes that miss nothing important while expending no unnecessary energy. He knows exactly when the sergeant is likely to appear and can shift from his comfortable slouch to proper attention in the space of a heartbeat. The sun climbs higher, and with it comes a bit more warmth, though the stone walls seem to absorb and hold the cold from the night like a sponge holds water. You unpin your cloak and let it hang loose around your shoulders, enjoying the slight relief from the heavy wool. Your jerkin is more comfortable without the cloak pulling at it, and you can move your arms more freely as you pace your section of the wall. The morning air feels good against your face, and you take a deep breath of the clean air that carries the scents of grass and distant wood smoke. A merchant's cart appears on the road in the distance, and you watch its slow progress toward the castle with something approaching gratitude. It's not that the cart is particularly interesting. It's probably carrying grain or wool or some other mundane cargo that represents the ordinary commerce that keeps the castle functioning. But it represents a change, something different to look at and think about. You've become expert at extracting entertainment from the smallest variations in your routine, finding meaning in the movement of clouds or the flight patterns of birds. The cart is drawn by 2 oxen, and even from this distance, you can see that it's heavily loaded. The wheels leave deep ruts in the muddy road, and the oxen strain against their yokes as they pull their burden up the slight incline that leads to the castle. Their breath steams in the cool air, and you can see the patient rhythm of their movement as they place one hoof in front of the other with the steady determination of animals bred for endurance rather than speed. A single man walks beside the cart, occasionally using a long stick to encourage the animals, though they seem to be making steady progress without much urging. The man moves with the unhurried gait of someone who spends his life moving slowly from place to place, covering vast distances through patience rather than speed. He's dressed in simple brown wool, with a wide-brimmed hat that protects his face from the sun and a cloak that shows the wear of constant travel. As the cart draws closer, you can make out more details that help pass the time and occupy your mind. The cargo appears to be sacks of grain, probably wheat or barley, covered with canvas to protect it from moisture. The sacks are bound with rope and stacked with the skill of someone who's loaded many carts and knows how to distribute weight for stability. The canvas covering shows patches and repairs that speak of long use and careful maintenance. You watch as the cart finally reaches the castle gates, where it will be stopped and inspected by the guards on duty there. The process is routine but necessary, checking the merchant's papers, examining the cargo for contraband, assessing any tolls or taxes that might be due. It's not your responsibility from up here on the wall, but you've performed the same duty many times, and you can almost predict how the interaction will unfold based on the posture and behavior of the participants. The gate guards are thorough but not overly suspicious. They know this merchant. He makes this journey regularly, bringing grain from the farms to the south and taking back manufactured goods and news from the castle. His papers are in order, his cargo is exactly what he claims it to be, and he pays the required toll without complaint or negotiation. After a few minutes of conversation, the gates swing open with a creak of hinges and the rattle of chains, and the cart rumbles into the courtyard below. With the cart safely inside, your attention returns to the empty road and the unchanging landscape beyond. The sun is higher now, and you can feel its warmth on your face when you turn toward it, though the stone beneath your feet remains cold and the wind still carries a chill that speaks of winter's approach. The wind has died down somewhat, though it still carries the promise of rain in the scent of the air and the feel of moisture that clings to everything. Your stomach begins to make quiet rumbling sounds, and you realize that breakfast was several hours ago. The morning meal of bread and ale, while filling at the time, doesn't provide much lasting sustenance for a day of physical activity. The weak ale has long since been processed by your body, and the heavy bread has settled into a memory of satisfaction rather than actual nourishment. You try to ignore the sensation, knowing that the midday meal is still some time away, but your body has its own schedule and continues to remind you of its needs. The landscape below is slowly changing as the sun rises higher and burns off the morning mist. What had been indistinct shapes in the gray dawn light are now revealed as familiar features: the cluster of farm buildings to the south, the old stone bridge over the stream, the ancient oak tree that serves as a landmark for travelers. The colors are muted but distinct, ranging from the brown of plowed fields to the green of pastures where cattle graze. A movement in the distance catches your attention, and you focus on it with the intensity of someone desperate for any distraction from routine. After staring for several minutes, you're able to make out a small group of deer picking their way across the moorland, probably seeking water or better grazing. They move with the cautious grace of wild animals, pausing frequently to lift their heads and scan for danger before continuing their journey toward a small copse of trees near the horizon. It's not much, but it's something different to watch, and you follow their progress with more interest than the situation probably warrants. The deer are too far away for you to make out many details, but you can see their general shape and the fluid way they move across the landscape. You find yourself hoping that they'll reach the shelter of the trees safely, though you know that your hope has no bearing on their fate and that your concern for wild animals is probably misplaced energy. The sun continues its climb toward noon, and the warmth becomes more noticeable. You roll back your sleeves and push your hood down, enjoying the feel of air against your skin. The stone battlements are beginning to warm under the direct sunlight, and you occasionally rest your hands on the sun-warmed stone, enjoying the contrast with the cold that seems to permeate everything else in the castle. Your feet have moved beyond mere discomfort into genuine pain. The too tight boots press against your toes and rub against your heels with every step, and you've developed a slight limp as you favor your left foot, which is bothering you more than the right. You try to minimize your movement, standing still for as long as possible before taking the few steps necessary to maintain the appearance of proper patrol. But standing still brings its own discomfort as your muscles stiffen and your joints protest the lack of movement. The morning watch is beginning to feel endless when you hear the sound of footsteps on the stone walkway. You straighten to proper attention, assuming it's the sergeant making his rounds, but instead it's Willem, who's been assigned to the adjacent section of the wall. He moves slowly, favoring his left leg slightly, an old injury that bothers him more on damp days and seems to be getting worse with age and repeated stress. Willem nods as he takes his position, and you exchange the brief greeting that acknowledges shared misery without dwelling on it. His cough is worse today, you notice, and his breathing has a wheeze that wasn't there a few days ago. He settles into his routine with the resignation of someone who's accepted that comfort is not part of the job description, and you return to your own pacing with renewed awareness of how much company can help ease the burden of solitary duty. The sun reaches its zenith, and you begin to hope that relief might be coming soon. The midday change of guard is one of the highlights of the day. A chance to sit down, eat a proper meal, and rest your feet for a precious hour or two. You scan the courtyard below, looking for signs that the next shift is preparing to take over, but you see no indication that relief is imminent. Time seems to slow even further as anticipation makes each minute feel like an hour. Your shadow has shortened to almost nothing when you finally hear the sound of a horn echoing across the courtyard. The horn signals the midday meal and the change of guard, blessed relief from the morning's duties that you've been anticipating for what feels like days. You can see guards emerging from various buildings and making their way toward the Great Hall, moving with the purposeful stride of people who have been looking forward to this moment for hours. Your replacement appears at the top of the stairs, a young man named Godwin who's been in service for about 2 years and still takes the duties more seriously than is strictly necessary or wise. He's eager and competent, though he still believes that constant vigilance might actually prevent something from happening, rather than simply being a show of force that reassures the castle's inhabitants. He nods respectfully as he approaches, already settling into the alert posture that he believes befits a castle guard. You hand over the informal responsibility for this section of wall with relief, providing the brief summary that duty requires while suppressing the urge to tell him that nothing ever happens here and that his intense focus will only make the hours pass more slowly. Instead, you simply nod and begin the careful process of descending the stone steps, your stiff legs protesting each downward step and your feet screaming in protest at the change in angle and pressure. The Great Hall is crowded with guards, servants, and various other castle personnel, all taking advantage of the midday break to rest and refuel. The noise level is higher than usual, with conversations mixing together into a comfortable hum of human activity. You find a seat at one of the long wooden tables and immediately begin the blessed process of removing your boots, a task that requires patience and determination as the leather has stiffened during the morning's wear. With your boots off, you can finally assess the damage from the morning's watch. Your feet are red and tender, with the beginnings of blisters forming at the pressure points you've come to know all too well. The skin is pale and wrinkled from moisture, and there are new areas of irritation that speak of the constant friction between foot and leather. You wiggle your toes, enjoying the simple pleasure of movement without the constraint of tight leather, and massage your feet briefly before turning your attention to the meal. The midday fare is more substantial than breakfast but still simple. A thick pottage made from barley and vegetables, with small pieces of meat floating in the broth like islands in a brown sea. The pottage steams in your wooden bowl, releasing an aroma that makes your mouth water and your stomach contract with hunger. The bread is the same coarse brown loaf from the morning, but it's been warmed near the fire, and there's a small dish of butter to accompany it, a minor luxury that transforms the simple fare into something approaching pleasure. You eat slowly, savoring both the food and the opportunity to sit still. The pottage is hot and filling, with a satisfying thickness that makes you feel properly fed for the first time since yesterday's evening meal. The meat is mostly gristle and fat, but it adds flavor to the grain and vegetables, and the warmth spreads through your body like a blessing. The warmed bread and butter are genuinely pleasant, and you find yourself eating more slowly than usual to make the experience last longer. Around the table, conversation flows in the desultory way of people who are tired and looking forward to rest. Someone complains about the quality of the ale, another guard mentions that his sword needs sharpening, and there's a brief discussion about whether the rain will start before evening. It's comfortable, familiar conversation, the kind that requires no particular attention but provides a gentle background of human companionship that reminds you that you're not entirely alone in your daily struggle. After the meal, you have a brief period of free time before the afternoon duties begin. Most guards use this time to rest, and you find a relatively quiet corner of the hall where you can lean against the stone wall and close your eyes. The stone is cool against your back, and the warmth from the meal and the fire makes you drowsy. Your feet are grateful for the continued relief from your boots, and you wiggle your toes occasionally just because you can. The sound of rain beginning to patter against the high windows of the great hall reaches your ears just as you're drifting off into a light doze. The sound is gentle at first, just a few drops hitting the stone and running down the narrow window openings, but it gradually intensifies into a steady drumming that echoes through the hall and speaks of a serious weather change that will affect the afternoon's duties. You open your eyes and look toward the windows, where you can see the gray light that indicates heavy cloud cover. The rain appears to be more than a brief shower, the kind of steady, soaking precipitation that will make the afternoon watch considerably more miserable than the morning had been. The prospect of standing guard in the rain fills you with a weariness that goes beyond physical fatigue. With a reluctant sigh that seems to come from your very soul, you begin the process of preparing for the afternoon duties. Your boots are still damp and stiff, and working your feet back into them is even more difficult than it had been in the morning. The leather seems to have shrunk slightly as it dried, and the pressure points that had been merely uncomfortable in the morning now press against tender, inflamed skin with a persistence that borders on malicious. Standing is an effort that requires both physical and mental preparation. Your first few steps are cautious as you adjust to the renewed constraint of your boots and the sharp reminders of the morning's damage. The brief period of relief has made you more aware of the discomfort, not less, and you know that the afternoon will be even more challenging than the morning had been. The knowledge that you still have hours of duty ahead of you settles over your shoulders like a lead cloak. The afternoon assignment takes you to the northern tower, the position you'd been hoping to avoid. The northern tower offers an unobstructed view of empty moorland that stretches to the horizon, broken only by occasional stands of scraggly trees and the ruins of an old watchtower that was abandoned decades ago when the political situation changed. More importantly for your immediate comfort, the northern tower catches the full force of the prevailing wind and offers no shelter from the rain that's now falling steadily with the determination of weather that plans to continue for hours. The climb to the tower is longer and more arduous than the morning's ascent to the wall walk. The stone steps are narrower and steeper, spiraling upward through the thick walls of the tower in a pattern that seems designed to exhaust anyone attempting to reach the top. Your boots slip occasionally on the worn stone, and you have to use your spear as a walking stick to maintain your balance while managing your shield and cloak. The sound of your breathing echoes in the narrow stairwell, mixing with the scraping of your boots on stone and the distant sound of rain that grows louder as you climb higher. The confined space amplifies every noise, and you become acutely aware of your heartbeat, the creak of your leather jerkin, and the soft rustle of your cloak against the stone walls. The climb seems to take forever, and by the time you reach the top, you're breathing hard and your legs are trembling slightly from the effort. The top of the tower is a circular platform surrounded by waist-high battlements, with narrow openings that provide some protection from arrows but do nothing to shelter you from the weather. The wind is immediately apparent as you emerge from the stairwell, tugging at your cloak and making your eyes water. The rain is coming at an angle, driven by the wind, and you realize with sinking heart that no amount of adjustment to your cloak will keep you completely dry. Your duties here are similar to those on the wall walk: pace the perimeter, watch for any signs of movement or trouble, and maintain a visible presence that demonstrates the castle's vigilance. The main difference is that the view from the tower is more comprehensive but less interesting. You can see for miles in all directions, but there's rarely anything to see except grass, heather, and the occasional sheep that dots the landscape like scattered white stones. The rain soaks through your cloak within the first hour, and you can feel the wetness creeping through your jerkin to your undertunic like cold fingers exploring your body. Your boots, which had been merely uncomfortable, are now becoming actively miserable as water seeps in through the seams and mingles with the sweat from your feet. Each step produces a slight squelching sound, and you can feel moisture spreading between your toes in a sensation that's both unpleasant and impossible to ignore. The wind is relentless, cutting through your wet clothing and chilling you to the bone with an efficiency that speaks of long practice. You pull your cloak tighter, but the wet wool is heavy and provides little warmth while adding considerably to your burden. Your hands are numb with cold, making it difficult to maintain a proper grip on your spear, and you have to stop periodically to blow on your fingers or tuck them under your arms for warmth that never quite penetrates to the bone. Time moves even more slowly in the tower than it had on the wall walk. Without the occasional distraction of activity on the road or in the courtyard below, there's nothing to break the monotony except the endless drumming of rain and the constant pressure of wind that seems to come from all directions at once. You count your steps as you pace the perimeter, 23 steps to complete the circuit, and try to calculate how many circuits you'll need to complete before your watch ends. The mathematics are depressing and seem designed to crush whatever spirit you have left. At your current pace, accounting for the need to stop occasionally to rest or adjust your equipment, you estimate that you'll complete the circuit roughly 4 times per hour. With 3 hours remaining in your watch, that means approximately 12 more circuits, or about 275 more steps. The number seems impossibly large, and you try to push the calculation from your mind, but it returns with the persistence of water finding its way through stone. Instead of dwelling on the endless repetition ahead, you focus on the immediate sensations: the feel of rain on your face, the sound of wind through the battlements, the sight of water running down the stone walls of the tower in patterns that change with each gust of wind. It's not pleasant, but it's real and immediate, and concentrating on these physical details helps distract you from the larger misery of your situation and the knowledge that this is only one afternoon in an endless series of similar afternoons. You lose track of time again. The rain has become a constant companion, a soft percussion on stone and leather that dulls your senses and blurs the edges of thought. You stop trying to stay dry. That battle was lost long ago. Now, you simply endure. Your fingers are stiff, and your grip on the spear has weakened. You shift it from one hand to the other, trying to coax some warmth back into your joints. The wood is slick with rain, and you have to be careful not to let it slip. You imagine the shame of dropping your weapon from the tower, of hearing it clatter down the stone steps or worse, vanish into the mud below. You tighten your grip, the wind gusts again, stronger this time, and you brace yourself against the battlements. The cold finds its way beneath your jerkin, down your collar, through the seams of your cloak. It's not just discomfort anymore. It's a slow, creeping ache that settles into your bones and makes you feel older than you are. You glance toward the horizon. The clouds are thick and low, the color of old iron. There's no sign of the sun now, just a dull gray light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The landscape is a watercolor of browns and greens, blurred by mist and rain. You see no movement, no travelers, no threats, just the endless moor and the slow, steady fall of rain. You pace again. 23 steps. Turn. 23 steps. Turn. Each circuit is a small victory. A way to mark time. A way to stay awake. Eventually, the horn sounds again. 3 short blasts that echo through the rain and stone. Relief. The end of your shift. You descend the tower slowly, carefully. The steps are slick, and your legs are unsteady. Each step sends a jolt through your knees, and your boots squelch with every movement. You grip the wall for balance, your fingers numb and clumsy. At the bottom, you pass your replacement, another guard, soaked and silent, nodding in grim acknowledgement. You don't speak. There's nothing to say. You've both been here before. Back in the great hall, the warmth is overwhelming. The fire roars in the hearth, and the air is thick with the smell of wet wool, smoke, and stew. You peel off your cloak and hang it near the fire, watching steam rise from the fabric. Your jerkin follows, then your boots. You sit heavily on the bench, your feet bare and red, your body aching. The evening meal is already being served. Another bowl of pottage, thicker this time, with more meat and a few precious root vegetables. The bread is the same, but it's warm again, and there's a smear of lard to go with it. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. The food is hot and filling, and it chases the cold from your belly, if not your bones. Around you, the other guards eat in silence or speak in low voices. No one has the energy for loud conversation. The day has worn everyone down. You hear the occasional cough, the scrape of a spoon against a bowl, the crackle of the fire. It's a kind of peace. After the meal, you tend to your gear. Your spear is wiped down and checked for splinters. Your shield is inspected for cracks. Your boots are stuffed with rags to help them dry. It's a ritual, one you've performed so many times it no longer requires thought. Just motion, just habit. You speak briefly with Willem. His cough is worse, and he looks pale. He shrugs it off, but you can see the worry in his eyes. You offer him a piece of your bread. He takes it with a nod. The evening passes slowly. There's no entertainment, no distraction. Just the fire, the quiet, and the slow return of feeling to your fingers and toes. You sit near the hearth, watching the flames dance, listening to the wind howl outside. The stone walls groan with the pressure of the storm, and the torches flicker in their brackets. Eventually, it's time for night duty. The call for night duty comes not with a horn, but with a quiet word from the sergeant. He moves through the hall like a shadow, tapping shoulders, murmuring names. You hear your own name spoken low, and you nod without protest. There's no point in arguing. The schedule is the schedule. You rise slowly, your body stiff from rest and cold. The fire has warmed your outer layers, but your core still feels chilled. You pull your cloak back on, now only slightly damp, and lace up your boots again. The leather resists, hardened by the earlier soaking, and your fingers fumble with the ties. You wince as the boots close around your sore feet, but there's no choice. The night won't wait. Outside, the rain has lessened, but the wind has not. It howls through the narrow corridors like a living thing, tugging at cloaks and rattling shutters. The torches flicker wildly, casting long, distorted shadows that dance along the stone walls. You make your way to the outer gate, where your post awaits. Night duty is different. The castle feels quieter, more ancient. The sounds are fewer, but sharper. A dog barking in the distance. The creak of a wooden shutter. The soft drip of water from a leaky gutter. Every noise seems louder in the dark. Your post tonight is the outer gatehouse. A stone chamber above the main entrance, with narrow slits for watching the road and a heavy wooden trapdoor that leads to the portcullis mechanism below. The room is small, barely large enough for 2 guards, and the air inside is thick with the smell of old wood, damp stone, and the faint tang of rusted iron. You relieve the previous guard, a man named Edric, who looks as tired as you feel. He gives you a brief nod and a muttered report, nothing to note, all quiet, wind from the east. Then he disappears down the stairs, leaving you alone with the night. You settle into your watch. The room is dark, lit only by a single lantern that casts a soft, golden glow. You place it near the slit that faces the road, careful not to let the light spill outside. The flame dances behind the glass, casting gentle shadows that sway with the wind. Outside, the world is black. The road is invisible, swallowed by the night. You can hear the wind in the trees, the rustle of leaves, the occasional snap of a branch. You strain your eyes, watching for movement, but there is nothing. Just the dark. You shift your weight from foot to foot, trying to stay warm. The stone floor is cold beneath your boots, and the wind finds its way through the cracks in the walls. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking your hands into your sleeves. The spear rests against the wall beside you, ready but unnecessary. Time passes slowly. You count your breaths. You listen to the wind. You watch the darkness. Occasionally, you walk a slow circuit of the gatehouse, checking the other slits, peering into the blackness. Always the same, nothing. Your mind begins to wander. You think of the fire in the great hall, of the warmth and the food. You think of your bed, thin and scratchy though it is. You think of home, though it's been years since you left. The memories are faded, like old cloth, but they still bring a kind of comfort. A noise breaks your reverie. A soft clatter, like stone on stone. You freeze, listening. It comes again, faint, distant. You move to the slit, peering into the dark. Nothing. Just the wind. You wait, heart beating faster now. Another sound. Closer this time. A rustle, a scrape. You grip your spear, eyes scanning the road. Still nothing. Then, a shape, low to the ground, moving slowly. You squint, trying to make it out. A dog, perhaps. Or a fox. It moves across the road, pauses, then disappears into the underbrush. You exhale slowly, tension easing. Just an animal. Still, you remain alert. The night has a way of playing tricks on the mind. Shadows become shapes. Sounds become threats. You remind yourself to breathe, to stay calm. The hours drag on. Your legs ache. Your back is sore. Your eyes burn from staring into the dark. You pace again, slow and steady, the sound of your boots muffled by the stone. You check the lantern, adjust the wick. The flame flares, then settles. Eventually, the sky begins to lighten. Not much, just a hint of gray at the horizon. But it's enough. Enough to tell you that the night is ending. You hear footsteps on the stairs. Your relief has arrived. A young guard, bleary-eyed and yawning. You give your report. Quiet night, one animal sighting. Wind still from the east. He nods, takes your place. You descend the stairs slowly, each step a small victory. Your body is exhausted, your mind numb. The castle is still quiet, the day not yet begun. You make your way back to the barracks. The fire has burned low, but the room is warm. You remove your boots with a sigh, stretch your aching limbs, and crawl into your bed. The straw mattress is lumpy, the blanket thin. But it's enough. You close your eyes, the sounds of the castle fading into the background. The wind, the creak of wood, the distant bark of a dog. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. And as you drift off, you think of the day ahead. Another watch, another meal, another night, but for now, there is rest. You wake again, though it feels like you never truly slept. The straw mattress has left its mark, creases on your skin, aches in your back, and a faint itch from whatever lives in the bedding. The blanket is twisted around your legs, damp from the humidity that never quite leaves the barracks. You blink slowly, adjusting to the dim light filtering through the narrow arrow slits. The air is still cold. Always cold. It clings to your skin, settles in your joints, and makes every movement feel like a negotiation. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and listen. The barracks are quieter now. Most of the guards are already up, their voices low, their movements deliberate. The smell of smoke and sweat hangs heavy in the air. You dress again. The same layers. The same damp tunic. The same jerkin, stiff with yesterday's rain. Your boots are dry now, but the leather has hardened overnight, and you know the pain will return as soon as you start walking. You lace them slowly, wincing as the edges press against tender skin. Today's assignment is different. No wall patrol, no tower watch. You've been called to stand in the Great Hall during court. A ceremonial duty, they call it. But it's no less demanding. You make your way through the corridors, the stone cold beneath your feet, the torches sputtering in their brackets. The castle is waking up. Servants move quickly, heads down, arms full of linens and buckets. You pass a boy carrying firewood, his face red from the effort, his breath fogging in the chill. The great hall is brighter than usual. The hearths have been stoked, and the long windows let in pale morning light. Nobles are gathering, lords and ladies in fine wool and fur, their voices soft and measured, their eyes sharp. You take your place near the dais, spear in hand, shield slung across your back. You stand straight, feet shoulder-width apart, eyes forward. The stone beneath you is uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. You shift slightly, trying to find a comfortable stance. There isn't one. The weight of your gear pulls at your shoulders, and your boots begin their slow assault on your feet. Court begins. The lord of the castle enters, his cloak trailing behind him, his boots polished, his expression unreadable. He sits on the high-backed chair, carved from oak and adorned with iron fittings. His steward stands beside him, a thin man with ink-stained fingers and a voice like dry parchment. Petitions are read. Disputes are aired. A farmer complains about a neighbor's encroaching fence. A merchant seeks permission to expand his stall. A young noble requests more men for his hunting party. The steward listens, nods, records. The Lord speaks rarely, his words few but final. You stand still. Your legs ache. Your back tightens. The hall is warm, but your body is cold. The nobles glance at you occasionally, their eyes lingering on your armor, your posture. You are part of the scenery. A symbol of order. A reminder of discipline. A commotion breaks the rhythm. A drunk is brought in. One of the stable hands, red-faced and shouting. He stumbled into the kitchens last night, broke a pot, insulted the cook. The guards escort him forward, and he stumbles, nearly falling. You step forward instinctively, your spear ready, but the sergeant waves you back. The Lord frowns. The steward reads the charges. The drunk mumbles an apology. He's fined, warned, dismissed. The guards drag him away, his boots scraping against the stone. Court resumes. You return to your post. The minutes stretch. The light shifts. The nobles speak in circles, their words layered with meaning, their gestures rehearsed. You listen without listening, your mind drifting. Eventually, the session ends. The nobles disperse, their cloaks swirling, their voices rising. The Lord stands, nods once, and exits through a side door. The steward gathers his papers, his eyes scanning the room one last time. You are dismissed. You walk slowly back to the armory, your feet throbbing, your shoulders sore. You return your spear and shield, placing them carefully on their racks. The room smells of oil and iron, of leather and sweat. You wipe down your gear, your hands moving automatically. There's time before the evening meal. You sit on a bench near the fire, stretching your legs, rubbing your feet. The warmth is welcome, but it doesn't reach the deep aches. You speak briefly with another guard, Joran, who spent the morning cleaning the stables. He smells of hay and manure, but his eyes are bright. He jokes about the nobles, their soft hands, their endless complaints. You laugh, quietly. It feels good. The evening meal is simple. Stew again, with barley and turnips. The bread is hard, but warm. The ale is weak, but wet. You eat slowly, savoring the heat, the weight, the moment of peace. Afterward, you return to the barracks. The fire is low. The air is still. You remove your boots, your jerkin, your cloak. You lie down on the straw mattress, pulling the blanket over your shoulders. The stone walls are silent. The wind has quieted. The torches flicker. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will come, but for now, you rest. You wake before dawn, not because you must, but because your body has learned to expect discomfort. The straw mattress has shifted again, and your shoulder aches from the uneven padding. The blanket is tangled around your legs, and the cold has crept in during the night, settling into your bones like a second skin. The barracks are quiet. A few guards stir, their movements slow and deliberate. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, listening to the soft sounds of morning, boots being laced, cloaks being folded, the occasional cough echoing off the stone walls. Today's duty is torch-bearing. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic, but it's necessary. The castle corridors are long and winding, and the torches must be kept lit. Without them, the stone passages become treacherous, dark, damp, and full of hidden dangers. You dress quickly, layering wool and leather, preparing for the chill that lingers in the lower halls. Your boots are still stiff, but the pain is familiar now. You lace them tightly, knowing that loose boots are worse than tight ones. The torch room is near the kitchens, a small chamber filled with bundles of pitch-soaked wood and clay pots of oil. The air is thick with the smell of smoke and resin, and your fingers are sticky within minutes of handling the supplies. You light your first torch from the brazier, the flame catching with a soft whoosh. The heat is immediate, a welcome contrast to the cold air. You carry it carefully, the flame flickering with each step, casting long shadows on the stone walls. Your route takes you through the lower corridors, past storerooms, servant quarters, and the old chapel. The torches here are spaced far apart, and many have burned low overnight. You replace them one by one, the process slow and methodical. Each torch is a small ritual. Remove the old one, scrape away the ash, insert the new, light it, watch the flame catch, feel the warmth, move on. The castle is quiet at this hour. You hear the distant clatter of pots in the kitchen, the soft murmur of servants beginning their day. A cat darts across the corridor, its eyes glowing in the torchlight. You pause, watching it disappear into the shadows. You reach the stables next. The smell hits you first: hay, manure, damp wood, and the musky scent of horses. The animals stir as you enter, their ears twitching, their hooves shifting on the straw-covered floor. You greet them softly, not with words, but with presence. They know you. They know your scent, your rhythm. You check the torches here too, replacing the ones that have burned low. The horses watch you, their breath steaming in the cold air. One of them nudges your shoulder. A gray mare with a scar above her eye. You scratch her neck gently, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath the coarse hair. She snorts, then returns to her feed. You linger a moment longer, enjoying the quiet companionship. The stables are warmer than the corridors, and the presence of living creatures is comforting. But duty calls. You continue your rounds. The chapel is next. A small, stone room with a vaulted ceiling and a single stained glass window that catches the morning light. The air here is still, reverent. You move quietly, replacing the torch near the altar, watching the flame reflect off the polished stone. You pause, not to pray, but to rest. The silence is soothing, and the flickering light creates patterns on the walls that dance like spirits. You sit on the edge of a wooden bench, letting your body relax, letting your thoughts drift. You think of the guards you've served with. Willem, with his persistent cough. Joran, always quick with a joke. Old Harold, who seems to know everything and says almost nothing. You think of the shared meals, the quiet conversations, the moments of laughter that break through the monotony. You think of the castle itself. The way it breathes, the way it holds memories in its stones, the way it never truly sleeps. Eventually, you rise. The rest of your rounds pass in a blur of flame and shadow. You replace torches, check oil levels, adjust brackets. You move through the castle like a ghost, your presence marked only by the light you leave behind. By midday, your shift ends. You return to the torch room, your hands blackened with soot, your cloak smelling of smoke. You wash briefly in a basin of cold water, the chill biting at your skin, then make your way to the great hall. The meal is simple: bread, cheese, a thick soup made from lentils and onions. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth, the weight, the moment of stillness. Afterward, you sit near the fire, speaking quietly with the others. The conversation is light: complaints about boots, jokes about nobles, stories from the past. You listen more than you speak, letting the voices wash over you like a tide. The fire crackles. The hall is warm. The day fades. And you rest. The evening settles over the castle like a heavy cloak. The light fades slowly, turning the stone walls from gray to deep blue, then to shadow. The torches flicker in their brackets, casting long, wavering shapes that stretch and bend with the wind. You've been assigned to the outer courtyard for the final patrol of the day. It's quiet now. The bustle of servants has faded. The nobles have retreated to their chambers. The kitchens are cleaning up, the fires banked, the pots scrubbed. The only sounds are the soft clatter of hooves from the stables and the distant murmur of voices from the guardhouse. You walk slowly, your boots crunching on gravel, your cloak trailing behind you. The air is cool, but not biting. The rain has stopped, and the sky is clear. Above you, stars begin to appear, first one, then another, then dozens. The moon is rising, pale and round, casting a soft silver light across the courtyard. You pass the well, its stone rim slick with moisture. You hear the drip of water, the creak of the bucket rope. You pause, listening. The sound is rhythmic, calming. You move on. The castle feels different at night. More ancient, more alive. The shadows seem deeper. The silence more profound. You feel the weight of history in every stone, every archway, every worn step. You check the gates. Locked. The portcullis lowered. The chains secured. You test the iron bars, your hands cold against the metal. Everything is as it should be. You walk the perimeter, your spear tapping lightly against the ground. You glance up at the towers, where other guards stand watch. You see their silhouettes against the sky, still and silent. You pass the chapel again. The torch you lit earlier still burns, its flame steady. You pause at the doorway, peering inside. The room is empty, the altar quiet. You feel a strange peace here, a stillness that settles into your chest like warm breath. You continue your patrol. The animals are quiet. The horses sleep standing, their heads low, their breath slow. A dog lies curled near the kitchen door, its ears twitching as you pass. You nod to it, and it thumps its tail once before settling again. You reach the far wall, where the castle meets the forest. The trees are dark and tall, their branches swaying gently. You hear an owl call, its voice low and haunting. You stop, listening. The sound echoes through the night. You think of the days that have passed. The endless watches. The meals. The cold. The quiet moments. The pain in your feet. The warmth of the fire. The faces of the other guards. The rhythm of life within these walls. You think of how time moves here, not in hours or minutes, but in routines. In meals, in shifts, in the changing light, you think of how the castle holds you, shapes you, becomes part of you. You finish your patrol. You return to the guardhouse, where the sergeant waits. He nods once, his eyes tired but alert. You report, quiet night, all secure, no disturbances. He grunts approval and dismisses you. You walk slowly back to the barracks. The fire is low. The room is dim. A few guards are already asleep, their breathing deep and steady. You remove your gear, placing it carefully beside your bed. Your boots come off with effort, your feet grateful for release. You lie down. The blanket is thin, the mattress uneven, but you are warm. You are tired, you are still. The sounds of the castle fade, the wind, the crackle of the fire, the distant footsteps. You close your eyes, and sleep takes you.